Hello everyone and welcome back to my garden. Today I am going to be planting oats. It's still early spring. It's maybe a little too early, so they're actually going to be going into this small greenhouse that I moved into place. Except for the greenhouse, most of the information in this video will apply to any small grains that you want to plant in the garden. I don't actually have experience with oats. This is a first for me. So I will be just applying everything that I know from growing other small grains like wheat and barley. Now, oats is probably the least hardy grain that I could grow in my garden, um, unless you consider something like rice. It's the least hardy small grain of traditional European usage that I could grow in the garden. And so I'm going to be spring planting it this year because my climate generally is only guaranteed to be hardy for wheat and rye over the winter. Um, so let's talk about generally when to plant. For oats, it is going to be in the spring. You can plant it in the fall to overwinter if you live in, like, I think zone 8 or higher. I might try it this fall with cover. I think that's a possibility. I'll just have to find out. Wheat, rye, barley, no problems really. Rye is or barley rather, is a bit less hardy. Anyway, what I will be planting today is Streaker Holus Oats. And my seed source here is Johnny's Selected Seeds. It is available from other places. I've got a pound of seeds here. I won't need nearly that much. You do want to pick a hulless variety for growing in the home garden. I don't think most people are going to have the equipment, the skill, or the patience to deal with a grain that's got hulls on it, because if the hulls are holding fast to the seed, they're going to be a lot of work to get off of there, especially doing it by hand. So let me just talk about how you could plant these and how I'm going to plant it. One approach to planting oats is to broadcast sow it. If you are broadcast sowing, then what you're going to do is you're going to prepare a seed bed, typically by at least shallow tilling, and then you are going to spread the seeds out on the ground by hand. Typically, you'll take and measure them out in advance. You'll put them in a bucket, and in that bucket, you are going to maybe mix them with some sand or some soil, and then you'll go back and forth over the ground that you're planting, scattering the seeds. It works best if you make several passes over the seed bed so that you can get them spread out uniformly. Then what you're going to do is typically you're going to use a heavy roller to roll them into the soil. You could skip that if you do the next thing that you need to do anyway, which is going to be you need to water them in. Now, if you did not roll them in, they may move around a bit when you water them. So be sure you roll them in if your ground is uneven, because you don't want them moving around a whole lot. Then probably you want to cover them to keep birds from eating them. And after you've done that, you're basically done. It's not a slow process, it's pretty quick. The way that I do it is actually slower. I plant them in rows. You can see here that my barley is in rows, my wheat is in rows, and here in the greenhouse I have already scratched out rows. Now, the reason I do my grains in rows instead of broadcasting, there are a lot of reasons for it. I find it to be a much better way to do them, in a garden setting at least. And that is, when I go to harvest, it's faster to harvest if it's in rows. You're only harvesting the rows, not the space between the rows. And if you're using a scythe, it might not make much difference. I use a hand sickle and cut all the straw near the ground. And for that, it's just much faster to go down the rows. So it makes up any time that you lost planting by harvesting rows. In addition, if it's in rows, you can mulch the plants. You can do any weeding, although small grains don't usually need weeding. Um, and it uses less seed to plant rows. You have fewer losses to things like birds. You don't have seeds washing away or anything like that. So it's just, in my experience, it's better to do it in rows as a home gardener. Now, I did mention mulching as one of the advantages of doing it in rows. The reason you would mulch small grains is really mostly the same that you would mulch anything else. It's going to suppress weeds. Again, they don't have a lot of weeds in them, but you have that benefit. It's going to conserve water. It's going to help build the soil. And another important reason for grains is because they can often, when they get taller, they can blow over in the wind. And if you have a heavy mulch at the base of the plants, it will help support the plants so that they stay standing up. So what I have done here is I've scratched out my rows. This greenhouse is 2 meters wide, and the rows, I've got 9 of them in here. That's going to put the rows just over 20 centimeters or just over 8 inches apart. That is typically how I space them. The way that I have made these rows is I've just taken the corner of my hoe and scratched the ground. And so this is about as close as I can get them anyway. Within the rows, I'm going to be planting the seeds a minimum of about 3/4 of an inch apart, or 2 centimeters. You can go closer. The grains will compensate for crowding by sending up more or fewer side shoots as they grow. The way that a small grain typically grows is it has a crown just under the soil level, and it sends up a bunch of shoots from that. Those shoots are called tillers, and you have more tillers on less crowded plants, so they compensate. Now, oats is going to need a soil temperature of around 40 degrees to germinate, 40 Fahrenheit. I've got 53 Fahrenheit here right now, which is good. And part of the reason for this greenhouse is to help keep the soil warm. So, because it is very early in the season. Anyway, what is that in Celsius? 11.7. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop the camera and I'm going to go ahead and scatter the seeds. I'm going to plant them, trying to get them probably about a half an inch apart. 3/4 is sort of the as far apart as you can get them, but it doesn't matter if you oversow a little. And then I will use the hoe to bury the seeds just a little bit, not really deep. And then I will step on the row. I will basically tread the row, basically going down it toe to heel, all the way down to sort of firm the soil around them. And I don't know if I'm going to water or not. I'm not going to water before I finish the video, but I might water. I don't know that I really have to. It looks like there's probably enough moisture to germinate them, but you can always water them in if you want to be sure. And once that is done, I will have to go and just wait for them to come up. And I expect it to take about 5 or 6 days for them to be up. I haven't planted them before, so I'm not 100% sure. But I do have some oats over here that have now germinated. And so once they're up, it will look a bit like this at first. And once they're maybe just a little taller than this, I'll be removing the greenhouse and starting to mulch. And if it gets really cold, I'll put a row cover over them to try and give them some additional protection. So that's how you start your small grains in the garden, and how I'm going to be doing the oats. And if you have any questions, Maybe I wasn't clear on something. Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff to help build the channel. Thank you very much for watching.